Back by popular demand, part two, presence without being loud. You probably know that you can be present and you can be loud. However, some people say that's just not me. I need to be present, however, without being loud. Also, on the other side, some people might say when someone's loud, I actually don't like to talk with them because I rather feel being shouted or talked at, not being talked with me. And we have an expert how to do it right with us here today. Hello and welcome back, Frankie Kemp.
Hi, Niels. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. We had a brilliant interview about interviewing at the top for the C-suite. So when we now say, because there, of course, it is not only there, but in general, it is important to be present. However, many people say the most present people in our organization are the ones who are the loudest in the meeting. And when you are the loudest in the meeting, people perceive you as being present. So most people start to copy that kind of behavior and say, I'm getting louder as well to be more seen. Other people say, look, this is just not my personality. Is it just bad luck for me now in this corporation? What's your take on that? How can I be present without being loud?
Well, there's a difference as well between loudness and being heard, and we stop listening to loud people. I
Yeah.
would say that presence is largely about listening and congruence in your
Hmm.
behavior.
What does that mean for you?
Mm. Okay, we all know that person who talks about themselves all the time.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, I think it's rife these days. And what it reflects to me is this insecurity. The more you feel that you need to talk about yourself, the more suspicious one could be that you don't
Mm.
believe in yourself. And I think more people are onto that than you think. It's not what makes people listen, it's what makes people stop listening. I'm
Hmm.
not saying that there isn't a time to be, I wouldn't say loud, I would say occupying more space, whatever that means,
Yeah.
vocally or physically. But the key to communication is being adaptable and congruent with your message. Um, I'm going to peel this back because a lot of people get presence mixed up with charisma.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
All
Go for it.
right. So the Latin translation of charisma, sorry, it's a Greek word.
Yeah.
The Greek translation of charis is favor. And so what charisma means is actually exhorting favor. In turn, that means being influential. So there's Professor John Antonakis, and he's from the University of Lucerne, and he quantified 12 attributes to being influential or
Hmm.
charisma or presence. He talked about, and it wasn't just he was talking about it, this is based on his research, moral conviction, the ability to tell stories, analogies, and non-verbals that are congruent with your message. I'll give you an example of what I mean by congruence in non-verbals. If
Hmm.
I say, Niels, you're doing really well. Now, did you see what I did there at the end?
Yeah. Yeah. It looked a bit like, I mean, when you tell me I do really well, maybe focus on me and not just, yeah, Frankie, you're doing really well, right? Cool. So, just,
Exactly.
yeah,
Right. So I see this in presentations all the time, these self-comforting
yeah.
motions that I describe in detail in my blog in a recent post on body language. And I've taken photos of people doing the finger rub, the neck rub, or when you make yourself smaller. So I see this, men and women both have slightly different leanings towards different
Hmm.
body language traits that belie the confidence that they're trying to portray. Now, by making sure that your body language is congruent with your message, you are seen as more trustworthy. There was a massive study with 900 people who observed CEOs, and these CEOs were doing their IPO roadshows around the States. And the sound was turned off with the viewers watching the CEOs and guessing the ones with the higher ratings on their companies. And they guessed correctly based on the non-verbals. Okay. And
Mm.
then the sound was switched on, and then the researchers
Yeah.
tested for other characteristics. And what they realized was this, that when the CEOs spoke in a way that was congruent with their message, for example, they used gesture in line with vocal emphasis. You're doing really well. And they didn't leak these
Yeah.
little gestures, which are
You're
very
doing really
telling.
well. Yeah.
Yes,
This is, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
This was one of the characteristics that these CEOs were all embodying. I mean, another one was using the power sphere. So on virtual calls, if, and I'm talking about from Anglo-Saxon American culture, it does differ depending on what culture you're in.
Yeah.
But you don't, if you're doing this on the screen, it's seen as out of control. But if you use what is called the power sphere, which is virtually, it would be from the bottom lip to the mid torso, this area is seen as controlled, contained, assured, but also expressive.
Hmm.
So when we talk about presence or charisma, it is these kind of characteristics that convey the presence. And Rosabeth Cantor from Harvard, she talked about another key element in presence, and that is the ability to listen.
Many leaders struggle with that, I can tell you. So how do I learn how to listen when you got trained for years? When you're on high level in an organization, you probably learned I need to enter the room and tell people what to do, and they expect me to talk, not to listen that much. How do you train yourself to listen more?
I think that's an unfortunate misunderstanding of what leadership is.
Absolutely. As I'm a leadership expert, I am fully aware. So,
It's
yeah.
not about telling people what to do, although it can be.
In certain areas and in certain situations, absolutely. So what do you tell people who now say, look, my personality always was very outgoing. I'm rather extrovert. I just don't know when I should like stop talking because I always think people like when I talk and they just keep on talking. Maybe you know these people who just missed the point where it was really nice to listen and they keep on talking. Anyone is sitting there like, we got it. Can we get back to work now? I mean, just we got work to do. They keep talking, talking, talking. How can people learn the balance between talking and listening?
Sometimes one needs a very honest conversation, which is this is the effect that you are really having on people. But it also, sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's to cover up an insecurity. Or because somebody told them years ago at the beginning of their career that you need to be heard in order to be visible.
Yeah,
And visibility isn't about being heard necessarily. It could be about just being involved, being seen. I mean, we already know that leaders who are seen more amongst their teams, that even just if it's a walkabout, have more influence. So it's that
absolutely.
powerful. You don't even need to be heard. I do think it's very important in with some people to realize, especially if they're saying everyone likes it when I speak all the time, one can
Mm.
bet that is not true. And a reality check on the effect that they might be having is very important. But also there is a misunderstanding about what listening is. So sometimes people think listening is responding with advice or just responding. So when Rosabeth Moss Kanter talks about listening, she also talks about seeking to understand. Now, Charles Duhigg broke this down beautifully in Super Communicators. And this is one thing. It seems it's simple, but it's not easy to do unless you train yourself. So I've used this in pharma with MSLs. I've used this with all sorts of people in consultancy roles. It's techniques like looping. So with looping, what you're doing is you're paraphrasing what you hear, and then you are asking whether you've understood correctly. And they've used looping in highly charged situations. For example, in a social experiment with the gun lobby and the anti-gun lobby in America,
Hmm.
to see whether they could create spaces where people would listen and seek to understand. And it had a transformative effect on everybody who went through this program. And it was guided by another Harvard lecturer who was in law. She's actually a legal professor, and she guided them through looping, through the whole technique of looping in order to reduce conflict. Now, you might not be in a situation where you are needing to reduce conflict, although I can bet my bottom dollar that will be part of your job,
Yeah, most likely.
most likely. But it's the other skills also, for example, summarizing, knowing how to challenge with calibrated questions, so that it's not on you to come up with solutions or opinions. What it is on you to do with listening, and this will increase your presence. So, coming back to the original question, is to scout for the underlying truth, for the unsaid, knowing what questions to ask, for example, so that you can solve the right problem. I mean, I see this in tech all the time. I see this in
Mm,
engineering all the time. People come up with a problem, everybody bounces into Slack to try and solve it. The managers
yeah,
completely lose the thread because no one's asking the questions. Are you even solving the right problem?
yeah,
That's
excellent.
listening.
Yeah.
That's presence, online, offline.
Perfect. I think these are the perfect final words. And now, of course, we say, what's happening right now when you're staying in front of people and you don't only have to be present, but you also have to pitch to people. And let's say that is way more complex than that because no one's waiting for being pitched at. However, that is our episode number 3. So stay tuned. We're going to have a third episode coming up very soon. And for today, there's only one thing left for me to say. Frankie, thank you very much for your time.
Lovely. Thank you, Niels.